What an amazing series of sessions today and yesterday. And thank all of you for bringing your wisdom and energy and questions and vision, and for showing up and saying yes to the invitation. Did you have a good time? Yeah. Would you come back next year? We bumped our dates a little earlier or a little later next year so that we're going to avoid the rain, hopefully. But June next year. We're going to close out the main stage session with a panel. We've been talking a lot about abundance and building communities. And so I'd like to, this next panel is how do we build Montana cities, towns, and neighborhoods that are beautifully designed, walkable, affordable, and mixed-use villages of opportunity. So please welcome our panelists. Jennifer Boyer, Daryl Schliam, Sarah Kitchen, and Jimmy Tallarico.
Ain't gonna be no
Jennifer Boyer is chair of the Gallatin County City Commission. Good to see you. Gallatin County Commission, but not city. Daryl Schliam, CEO and president, Bozeman Area Chamber of Commerce. Good to see you, Daryl. Sarah Kitchen, architect and principal at 45 Architecture, and Jimmy Tallarico, Chief Strategist Officer at Cushing Terrell Architects. Have a seat, guys. All right, what a week it's been. I mean, it's only been a couple days. Like, this is only the second day, technically, right? It feels like a week. So, as I mentioned, we started this whole session off yesterday with Derek Thompson and abundance. And curious, what do we need to do from a process perspective to optimize our systems in designing these communities that we want to live in, that are aspirational? Clearly, we're moving at sort of a breakneck speed. Richard called this our moment. How do we seize this moment, and what do we need to do to be able to optimize these processes? I'll start with you.
Great, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be part of this panel. I really appreciate it. I think we have an incredible opportunity at our fairgrounds, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But one way that we could look at our fairgrounds that have been neglected is we could see that space and say, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to reimagine this, rebuild it? How much money will it cost? We can't do it. It's impossible. I think the flip side of that is looking at our community values, the assets in this place, in region that make this place so special, that keep people here and keep people coming back, and form deep partnerships that reflect the heritage that we all cherish, but also really look to accelerate and lift up community and our economy and those deep connections that are so important. And I think, to use Patton's opening remarks, we have an opportunity to write a love letter to our community through the fairgrounds.
Daryl?
Hey, first of all, I think thank you to Patton for putting this on, and especially to the county. And Caitlin, I got to give her a lot of credit at the fairgrounds for opening herself up to, for really opening herself up to the opportunity that we all want to have an input in. And I can't imagine the thousands of people that already told her the ideas of what should and shouldn't be done across the way. So I think that the spirit of cooperation, and our aspect would be looking at it from, we really look at it from 7th Avenue all the way to Rouse, from Oak, and take the whole city block of what that community jewel could look like that now is not only in the city limits of Bozeman, a Gallatin County property, but how do we recognize and honor the past of the agriculture, all the history that when he tied up horses at the Baxter. Make sure we take that into conjecture when we're talking about this, because if we talked about it from the Bozeman proper, you would say, well, Bozeman high schools don't even have FFA anymore. But we don't want to forget that history that the Baxter Hotel used to have barter trading, gold trading, old cigar, cognac bar in the basement, and the history that's brought there needs to be carried through. And I think that's where the business community has an opportunity to step forward, to be an equity partner for social engineering, for also look at how do you do into the future continue for a sustainable model that financially doesn't put the burden back on any one city, county, business, or organization. So we're excited about the opportunity, and again, thank you for inviting us to the table. My mom said when I left the dairy farm, you better make sure you wear a suit, you're not educated enough, and you're not good looking enough to get on stage. So, but thank you for the opportunity. But thank you for the opportunity. So.
I'm so humbled to be here in this room full of community builders, and I'm just so inspired and charged. I think maybe pulling off of Richard's talk just to kind of understand and what Jennifer's speaking about in terms of what's our Tulsa-ness, what's our Bozeman-ness, and in particular to abundance, and really trying to understand this as a community of people who are here for the environment in a good part. And abundance comes from an ecological definition. It speaks to a number of species, and growth itself comes from this idea of plants and animals, and kind of understanding ourselves as this one species. How might we think about that in terms of what our abundance is? How might that frame some of our choices? And how does that get us closer to some of the determinants of health that we heard about yesterday? And what if we valued these things just a little bit more, and kind of understanding that it's in competition with things like the economy? How might we understand a decision like that? Maybe not everyone can have a view of the Bridgers for us to really preserve that view and to preserve what we're amongst here. So I think I really encourage us to define what abundance is for us.
Thanks, Sarah. So, moving towards abundance. I have a clicker here. Yara, did you know that? I'm going to advance the slide. That's the wrong slide. Where do we go back here?
You're jumping right into it already.
There we go.
Huh?
All right. So getting involved, getting engaged, right? So this is a little plug here. We're actually working with the county for doing some affordable housing rezoning right now. If you live in Gallatin County, please take a snap of that QR code. There's a QR code there. It's probably right behind Jennifer's head. But this is a survey that we're doing to get feedback from you all on how to approach affordable housing in our county. So shameless plug for that. Moving towards abundance, I think let's all agree to start with yes. And I'm saying this, the thing that comes to mind for me is a friend, a client, who he's wanting to do things related to food cart businesses, just for one example. So he took it upon himself to see what it would take to start a food cart that just serves smoothies. Pretty simple concept. And he abandoned that idea because of how challenging it was to figure out how to get through the city process with a business that was kind of undefined in terms of, the regulations behind it. So, and conversations that we had while he was working on that was the people that he had to work through started with no, basically, explaining why something wasn't going to work. And if we just change that mindset of saying, how can we come alongside together, start with yes. What's the harm in having a smoothie truck, right? I mean, who would not want that? Who would not partake in something like that? So if we know these things are good, the fact of, the talks yesterday and Derek Thomas talking about the bridges failing, how many bridges do we need to have kind of simulated failures in Bozeman to get us a little active and moving forward with the mindset of yes and moving forward together? Sound good?
Right on. So I was really inspired by Tim in South Bend and the slicing of 250 pages out of their red tape. Just out of curiosity, between the county and the city and the chamber and all these different moving parts, you guys are applying for permits, and so on. What are the ways that you can see to sort of remove some of that friction to be able to help these processes not lose control over the design standards and the things that are important to us to maintain the heritage and character of this place? But how can we optimize these systems and engage the community more and and have it feel a little bit more of a co-creation process, but while it's optimized?
I'll take a first stab from the county. The county has less regulations than the city does. We just are a different creature that way. I think some of the best projects that we see come before the commission are those where the developer has done direct outreach to the neighbors and taken into the concerns and the values and the impacts and integrated those into that design. So by the time it gets through our planning department and our planning board and comes to the commission, the people who are standing up in the room are like, yes, thank you. That was great. I love how you conserved water in this development. I loved how the spacing and the open space was laid out and how your trail connected to our trail. Thank you. So I think that integration with our community members makes it for a better product.
Beautiful.
I kind of have maybe an unfair advantage to answer that, but I think the biggest thing, the word you heard was connectivity. We're very fortunate that every Wednesday morning, either the mayor, one of the county commissioners, school district superintendent sits with our board of directors, that we have access to be able to give opinion from the board of directors and our membership that's out there to engage in it. I would tell you, we've got a long-standing history. We don't always agree with the county. We don't always agree with the city. But there's one thing I never left any of my executive room meetings for, is that I always shook their hand and said, let's work on the things that we know we can work on. Let's work on the things that we can fix. And what we disagree on, let's bring it back to the table again. But we need to have that conversation and do it civilly. And that's the biggest thing I think that I've seen lost. And I will be ashamed. I started my 16th year. Our economic development department, Britt Fontenot, has been with us for every Friday morning for 15 years. The county commissioners, the city, the school district, every bond issue that they want to go out, we're well informed and funded ahead of time. You also, it's responsibilities a little bit on us. Us as an individual needs a little bit more to understand the city process, the county process. It's easy for me to say, well, Jennifer, I don't know why you have that in there. Jennifer inherited what Commissioner White and Commissioner Skinner and everybody else passed before. So they're approachable. And in my opinion, working opinion, you have to be able to disagree civilly, work on those things. And when they tell you no, you can't go back and take your toy home and say, I'm going to be mad at them at every other project and forget about it. It's truly a working relationship, but it has to be from both sides. And I always try to do my homework prior to walking to that podium out of the respect that they're not paid enough to listen to what they have to during these times of civil discourse, and I hope that we can change that pattern, because for 15 years I bragged that Bozeman, Montana was civilly, across the country, a best place we possibly can be, and I'm ashamed to say that today we've gotten off on the wrong foot. We need to come back to civil discourse in this community.
Yeah, in terms of civil discourse, I've been part of a group of architects kind of collecting feedback. You know, architects are closest to the code and kind of understand when it makes or breaks a project, when it allows you to do something that's really beneficial to the community, and when it's preventing that. And we've come up with a list of feedback that we're going to share back. I'm going to go to my first city commissioner meeting on Tuesday. Hope to see you there. And we'll be sharing some of that feedback that we're understanding from designers. And if you're interested to contribute feedback, please let me know. We've got a survey and a draft of ideas. And a lot of those ideas are centered around things that we know make good communities. And that includes form-based housing. So you saw a bit of the middle housing. You know, it shouldn't be, limited in the number of units that you see a lot of housing communities in places like Boston where it looks like a home from the outside, but it has many, thriving families within. So how do we make choices like that preserve the character and also allow us all to live here? So yeah, reach out to me if you've got some thoughts. I would love to show up at the meeting next Tuesday together with some inspiration here, civil discourse.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm just going to, I guess, kind of off of Sarah's lead there. She's a great example right now of the fact that I think Bozeman and Gallatin County are moving in the right direction. I've been here since '96, and the codes have changed. We've had some evolution over the last about a decade, I guess, is kind of when we did some rewrite things back then. The city engaged the design professionals at that time. One thing that always stood out to me that I think about pretty frequently is Ben Lloyd. I'm not sure if Ben is still here today, but he was architect with Q, started Q here in Bozeman. We were talking about how to, improve the design guidelines, and he made a comment about when, design guidelines might be a little loose, that you end up with eclectic neighborhoods like, the north side of Bozeman, where you have some, kind of the one house from the next may not look very consistent, right? There's a lot of variety around in that neighborhood, but then he stopped and he said, "And what's wrong with that?" And that changed my perspective as a younger design professional, and like very much, you want to have your hands all over design and controlling what, the outcome of something is going to be, thinking that, maybe it's our God complex or something. But to be okay with allowing chance to play a role in what makes great communities great, not thinking that we need to have rules around everything to kind of dictate what something's going to look like or going to be. I mean, for crying out loud, you can throw a rock in downtown Main Street and hit about 6 architects, right? I mean, you guys know that. We're not short on the professionals around here, and most of us come from a great school, Montana State University. I know there's a guy from Kansas State, but that's, we like the Bobcats around here. So I think maybe having a little faith in loosening up the regulations, have a strong vision at the top that can kind of guide some of those things and take some of that red tape away that's kind of closer to the bottom.
We started this whole festival experience off this week with a little bit of an experiment, and we brought about 100 cross-sector people, architects, designers, mayors from across Montana, artists, musicians, all together, architects, planners, city, council, county, all together in this room up at Montana State University to have sort of an experimental design charrette over 3 hours or so to envision what 100 acres, a big chunk of this community, what 100 acres around the Gallatin County Fairgrounds could look like. And I'm not sure, how many of you spend time at the fairgrounds currently? Oh, all right. How many of you live here but have never been there? All right. So, there's a lot of, amazing usage buildings there, and some of them are very seasonal. And so, the challenge was like, what could we think of that could be here that would be a more year-round and multi-use and multi-purpose and mixed use, and so we had a charrette. Ginny, what's a charrette?
Well, with 100 people, it sounded like a bad idea first. Like, are you kidding me? So charrette, yeah, it's a French word for cart, and the kind of the historic reference is that in those kind of the French design schools, you're drawing, and this cart is passing by. Before the cart passes, you need to be able to put your assignment basically into that cart before it leaves, and so it's about this quick iteration. And it kind of, took on that meaning of being like a quick brainstorming drawing exercise. So that's the basic of a charrette.
So we had 20 groups, and do you want to show us a little bit of some of the results?
Yeah, let's see here. So these are some images of that charrette. I'll say I feel like I'm in a sticky situation here now because I've really gotten to know Padden and Yarrow, and I love you guys. These guys don't know what no means, and it's always something is always possible. There's always a way to figure it out. So when we first started talking about this, having the charrette style was, I think, really important for me. Just with what we experience in our firm with Cushing Tarot, we do this at least every 2 weeks as an office. We get together and do these charrettes. And the process of having to put your thoughts down on paper in the drawing form is really important to not just expressing your ideas, but also building relationships. makes you pretty vulnerable. You know, everybody thinks they draw terribly. Even some of the best illustrators I've seen think that they're not as good as they actually are. So it's a really good place to start to help building relationship and kind of common ground around ideas and vision. So yeah, these are some images, the sketches you can see. We broke into roughly 20 groups, somewhere between probably 5 to 10 people per group. We had a list of, we call them ingredients, 6 ingredients, and above that, I'm not sure if Caitlin is still here, but Caitlin Quisenberry, she put a document together for us that had 7 questions that were really important to her in terms of thinking about the future of the fairgrounds. Those were our umbrella questions. From there, we had 6 ingredients that we assigned each group 1 ingredient, trying to give some focus and direction to, you know, this big idea. We're looking at 100 acres overall for this, 64 acres on the fairgrounds and some of the surrounding area. I was surprised personally and how much all of the groups really wanted to take a big picture look. That was kind of surprising to me. So they kind of like took off in their own directions and came up with some great ideas that we were able to come back as a bigger group, present 2-minute quick presentations for every group on their big ideas. For some reason, I agreed that our team would take that information and distill that down into a cleaner site plan in 1 day. And to create some imagery around that kind of emphasizes some of the points and the keys that we all discussed as a group. That feels like a lot that I said, so.
Well, I would love to see some of the results.
Okay.
And I'd also love to hear from you 3 what your experience was like in this. I mean, I think for me, it was kind of a cool thing to like, wow, that's possible. And it's not an official process, right? Like we're just going to be able to find a bunch of ingredients and serve them up in a salad bowl to the county to consider. But there will probably be a part 2 of this sometime in a couple months where we distill even a smaller group. But just the idea of getting the community engaged in an imaginative process was, for me, really fun to be a part of and witness. What was that like for you all?
I really actually want to hear, from you, Daryl, on what your experience was with.
I tell you, it was very refreshing. I mean, for me, we go to work every day, and the amount of things that you have to do, we're cornered in a box of what I'm supposed to do that day and everything else. This gave me an opportunity to go back to like when you first came here 16 years ago. Gave me the opportunity to take my blinders off, say, your job is to come in and find out what's wrong within the community. But my first boss taught me, don't ever become part of the community, and please don't take that wrong. He says, because when I first came to Aurora, Illinois, I would pick up every piece of garbage 3 blocks from the garbage deck to where the Chamber of Commerce was. He said 10 years later, well, it's just a small piece of garbage. Next thing you know, you're walking by bags of garbage. He said, so always be critical of your own community and make sure you have a vision. And the first thing I lead off with when I came in there was, other than money, why should we not do this? Don't let money be the obstacle to stop this. So.
Yeah, and I just offer it was just such a wonderful experience to hear just people's different perspectives of different places they had been and how to integrate some of those ideas in. I learned how people are using the fairgrounds now, how they access it, how it's connected to the surrounding communities. We started with this, just thinking and reflecting on the last time that you came to the fairgrounds. And for me, it was an incredibly stressful time where my toddler wanted nothing to do with Earth Day, wanted everything to do with the parking lot. And there's a whole lot of parking lot there. So just understanding for yourself, what does it mean to experience a place and what do you want for that place? And, for anybody that's not a design professional, that you can do that. And how do we, collectively kind of understand what we want that place to look like, who we want to meet there, who we want to be, what we want our toddler to be doing instead of being in the puddles, and what are the things that, we see as a community in this place.
What I love is the dedication to social infrastructure and the base elements that help people come together and create community. And I'm pretty inspired by the collective thoughts and visions that came out. And because together we're all going to be making a decision about that's going to be here for the next 100 years, right? This is a 100-year investment. And that's pretty awesome to be part of.
Amen.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I think one thing that we did get out of this is that it's a big site, and everybody came to terms with that. The scale is big, 64 acres for the fairgrounds specifically. So with that, just with how this site plan is laid out, and there's, again, nothing official about this. It's one interpretation based on all the feedback we got during the charrette. There's room for multiple nodes of activity and multiple things that we can do across the site to provide opportunities for engagement for the community. So I think that's a big takeaway for me, like moving forward with it, is to look at the areas that we can kind of design specifically for different purposes of engagement. So this is one example what a streetscape might look like, kind of at the boundaries between the fairgrounds and the developments to the west or to the north. I should say this is also an experiment in AI rendering, how we can use that to our advantage in discussing some solutions. Water came up, which was great. I personally love that idea, and it was funny. Our team put on here, and they actually initially labeled it retention pond. We changed it to recreation pond, and the reason the reason they did retention pond is because you need retention. It's something you can get approved. To say recreation pond is not necessarily something that's always easy to get past. So this is an image of what a waterfront could look like. Activity in the water, parks along the shorelines, multiple buildings that kind of front along the water edge there. And moving into kind of another node of where we might have the food hall and maybe a reimagining of a convention space, or how does the ice arenas kind of fit into this pond element. Another image here that moves a little closer, having some bridges or something along the water feature as well. And then another area of just thinking about ways to have open space that can be activated by people's use. How do they want to use this space on their own? It's kind of the space in between, right? And this is one I think was intriguing, that thinking about between the rodeo grounds and the baseball park. Right now, one thing I was proud of on our site plan, there's a lot of green, right? If you go out there now, it's a lot of gravel and dirt. But to think about what can happen with that space in between. So not necessarily just the elements that kind of create the functions for the buildings or the program elements, but the space in between that makes you want to walk these trails, look at public art. I can imagine a 2-year-old on a Strider bike, driving down that sidewalk and probably plowing into a bush somewhere, but loving life and having fun. So
getting to see a rodeo on the left and a baseball game on the right.
That's right. Yep, exactly. So these are the images there overall, just to kind of let you guys have some orientation.
It was a beautiful experiment, and I hope to do more. I'm really happy that we were able to bring this crew together for the beginning of the Montana Festival and end on this. And thank you, Cushing Turrell, for all of your work in harvesting these images over the last couple of days. I know you guys have been cranking at the office. Yep. Very grateful.
Absolutely. You bet.
We're out of time, and we have an amazing close, but I'm really grateful for all of your work for this community and this county and the city, and the visioning that you do. And this is our moment in Bozeman and in Montana. And so thank you for helping us seize it.
Thank you.
Thank you.